racing immediately. But a champion becomes a legend. McCabe Diva wins it again.
Yes, yes, yes! Wins the Everest. Glenn Boss wins another big one.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Who's the Boss? Season 2 is in full swing. Adam Peacock here. Somewhere in the world is Glenn Boss. Bossy, come in. How are you, mate?
I'm very good, Adam. How are you, my friend?
I'm well. It's warm where I am, and we'll get to airtouch in a moment, but I understand you're in another part of the world enjoying some good times with some mates.
Yeah, mate. I'm in New Zealand, Queenstown. We've been playing Jack's Point. There's 12 of my mates, and we had a 4-day tournament of golf, and it ended yesterday, and it's been an absolute ball. Got Fatty's money, got a few of the boys' cash over the week, so it's always nice to get that done.
Yeah, well, Paul Vorton, rugby league, great. He's got plenty, so I'm glad you got some of that. But yeah, good times, mate. Good vibes with your mate to get away with your mates, lifelong friends.
Oh, mate, if you've never been to Queenstown, and I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a golfer or not, you love your hiking or whatever it is. It is probably one of the most beautiful parts of the world to come and see. We've been getting up in the morning, jumping into the lake. It's about 10 degrees. Ooh. Go and spending about 4 or 5 minutes in the water. Just starts your day off. We've done a bit of hiking, played golf, and the food here is just off the charts.
Mate, glad you're enjoying life. That's outstanding. You've been a busy boy over the last couple of months, so you totally deserve all of that. Did you get a chance to, you would have, check out some of the great racing last weekend? We had some Group 1s on the Eastern Seaboard down at Caulfield. We had a Group 1 over in WA, some great international racing. What caught your eye?
Oh, the Japan Cup. Obviously, Yutaka Taki, he's, wouldn't believe he's 55. We're only about a couple of weeks apart, and I know him because I've ridden over there and we've become friends. He is their pin-up boy over there, has been for many decades, continues to ride at a very high level, as we've seen winning the Japan Cup again.
Yeah, and that race, Dojuice was the horse that he was running. Mate, I love the Japanese stars. I wish they'd bring more of them down here, or maybe the local trainers don't, because they might clean up. I remember back in 2006 after the Maccabi era, it was 1-2 in the Melbourne Cup. But this horse at the 1200, Bossy, you would have seen it as well. Your mate, Yutaka, had a grip of the horse, and he looked like, you see staying horses, they go, oh, they're not going to have anything left at the end if they're that on the bridle. But he just let down. It was an amazing run. But these horses are freaks, aren't they, Bossy? Oh,
Adam, basically I would regard the Japanese horses on a global level, probably some of the best. There's no doubt. They're great travellers. They'll be in Hong Kong, next week with a team, no doubt. But when the Japanese come, you've got to be very, very respectful because, as you've seen what they've done in Australia, they've won Cox Plates, they've won Caulfield Cups, they've won Melbourne Cups. Globally, they are one of the most respected horses because when they do, they just win.
Well, mate, we'll get to our special guest in a moment. Obviously, you mentioned international racing there. We've got a big weekend ahead in Hong Kong around the corner as we sit here right now. But before we get to our special guest, and you can tell us about him in a sec, this episode of Who's the Boss is brought to you by airtouch, as you can see over my shoulder right there. airtouch, the ultimate smart air conditioner controller for your home or business. With airtouch, you can control the temperature in any room right now from your phone or smart device, no matter where you are. It's like having climate control in the palm of your hand. Now, Bossy, you know all about this. So you could literally sit there in Queenstown, and as long as your Wi-Fi is working and all of that, your phone's working, you can control your pad back here in Australia or about the air temperature if it's a little hot out over here.
Yeah, 100%. And if you've got guests in the house, you can actually play games. You make the heat go up and then make it cold. You can have a bit of fun. They'll be ringing you, what are you doing? I'm playing with my AirTouch.
Shout out to the Boss household.
It is such a great tool. Yeah. Come and stay at my joint. You'll get driven mad.
Yeah, shout out to the Boss household. It's currently sitting there in southeast Queensland in 34-degree heat as Bossy turns up the air conditioner just to have a bit of fun over there in New Zealand. It's got energy-saving features as well. AirTouch helps you reduce your power bills, which is important right now while keeping everyone comfortable. Whether you're looking to cool down this summer or heat things up this winter, AirTouch has you covered. Discover smarter climate control today by visiting airtouch.net.au. Stay cool, stay connected with AirTouch. And to stay connected with this particular show, hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube at Who's the Boss Pod. That's where we're at. We'll put out all the clips on social media, and the full episode obviously available on YouTube and to listen to wherever you get your podcasts from. Now, Bossy, very special guest this weekend, a young man you've had a bit to do with early in his career, later in your career, but with the family as a whole, all throughout your career.
Yeah, I've watched this young man from a young child just grow up and be tutored by arguably, one of the greatest trainers that'll ever, he's got history, Bart Cummings. Imagine having Bart Cummings in your ear telling you stuff. It's a no-brainer, right? So I've ridden Group 1s for his dad, I've ridden Group 1s for his grandfather, and I've ridden Group 1s for James Cummings. And he's one thing about it, which your listeners and viewers will see, Adam. This guy, his intelligence is on a very good level. You can talk about art, you can talk about fashion, you can talk about anything, and he'll have an idea about it. Very clever guy. So I'm really looking forward to sitting down and have a great chat with him.
Well, let's get into it. We talked about a few things across life, not just horse racing, with one of the best trainers around, James Cummings. So I guess this week on Who's the Boss has a last name that's synonymous with Australian racing. It is James Cummings, the trainer of 50 Group 1 winners and been in the game all his life pretty much. Great to have you, mate. How are you?
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
You know this. How long have you known this guy for, Bossy?
As long as he's been on this planet, I'd say. Very intertwined, obviously, with his grandfather. I've ridden Group 1 winners for the whole lot of them. For Bart, Anthony, and James. So, I've admired his grandfather ever since because he's the doyen of our sport. But when you actually meet the man, you kind of know that you're in the presence of something very, very special as soon as you meet him, without even speaking. So having the opportunity to ride for Bart and ride winners for him, and then his son, and then he's James, the son of Anthony. So long dynasty.
Exactly. James, we were saying last week, you could have if you wanted to, but bring in all Granddad's Melbourne Cup trophies. We just filled them up here.
Load them up.
We fill it through. Do you want to officially welcome our guest?
Talking about the trophies.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times would you drunk out of Melbourne Cups?
I think I have never drunk out of one.
What?
Yeah.
Stop it.
Yeah,
Well,
Did Bart have him behind a cabinet or something, did he?
Well, there's a bit of a feeling that you don't go near something so cherished that you're trying to win for yourself.
Fair
so
enough.
that's one thing.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it was, they were kept behind lock and key in a glass cabinet at Prince's Farm.
Yeah.
And thirdly, they're now on display at Flemington.
Yes, I've seen them.
In a really cool.
It is a beautiful case.
Memorial.
Yeah.
As a racing museum for anybody to come along and have a look. Any day, not just race day. And actually showed the kids the other day when I was going over to Flemington for a little media call.
Yeah.
And they're not just Melbourne Cups, but everything in new markets.
Yeah. Cox plates,
trainers' titles.
Yep.
Like the little medallions that you might see for small tokens for big wins, and everything right up to like Caulfield.
Well,
Melbourne
mate,
Cup,
you're in for a you're going to have a drink out of mine, right? You've got to. Do you want to?
I'm not going to. No, I'm not going to. No, it's a...
Until you own one yourself.
Exactly right.
Oh,
it's like
well,
the gold medal type thing.
Well,
with the Olympians.
this is the thing that Bart set up,
Yeah.
Bart said this, you can't touch one until you own it. Like, that's why, hence the glove.
Yeah.
But he was always of the opinion that unless you take one home, that's when you can have a drink.
As a team, we went to celebrate Charlie's win when Cross Counter won the cup.
Charlie Appleby.
Yeah, Charlie Appleby won with Cross Counter. Kerry McAvoy rode the horse. We had Avilius in the race, and Avilius was ready to run a race, but there was a horse that went amiss up ahead of him just past the winning post, and it just
took you out of the race.
Took him out of the race.
Yeah,
so
correct.
But we were cheering for Sheikh Mohammed to win the race, and the team went to celebrate afterwards.
Yeah.
And there's some of my friends, like some people on the team, they drank from Charlie's cup, and I thought they were traitors.
Yeah. So you didn't, even then you didn't do it.
I didn't do it.
You've got to stick true. You got to stick true to that. Well, we might have one.
Oh, I'm happy to, mate. Like, you're about the only person in Australia that hasn't drunk out of this thing.
Yeah, actually, you are. Yeah. You are. I take them around everywhere. And because, I mean, they are, without a doubt, the most coveted trophy in Australian sport.
Yeah.
I'm talking about across all sports in Australia. This is the most recognised when you see the silhouette of this thing, everyone knows what it is. You know, and I love taking them out, James, to speaking jobs. Like I just did in Roma just the other day for the Roma Cup. You know, 300 people turn up for the Calcutta, and and I let them have a beer out of it, and it's amazing the stories that they can tell of all their experiences around the Melbourne Cup. It's everyone's being touched by it somewhere, you know.
Yeah. What was your first one that you can remember going to?
The first one I remember. Well, the first one I was at was Efficient, the Melbourne Cup.
Lloyd Williams.
Yeah,
06.
Yeah, he'd won the
07.
07.
He'd won the Derby in 06.
Yep, correct.
And he came back 12 months later to win the Cup. He was an acceptor for the Melbourne Cup after winning the Derby.
That's
the year
what
before.
he was. Correct.
He was scratched because Lloyd and John Petefield, they weren't happy with the horse on race morning, and he came back to win it 12 months later. His form was like a little indifferent, but he'd run good races here and there, and they held him back like Cox Plate lead up, and so they'd held him back, and he exploded on the day, and he was very impressive. Then later, I was there for Viewed, so that was a pretty big day.
Oh, massive! He on a horse he was. Like he talk about horses that he went through the winter, won the Brisbane Cup. I think Ollie rode him in the Brisbane Cup, and he won up there, and he turned up with a young Blake Shin.
Yeah,
you know, I think he would have only just been 20.
Yeah.
19 or 20.
He was really young. He was really young. He was riding for Gay at the time.
Yeah, that's right. And
Gay said he'd be the next Frankie Dettori.
That's what he. Yeah, well, she's not far wrong.
Yeah, no,
he's pretty well up there. But
amazing record.
Yeah, so we speak a lot, Blake and I, but he almost reflects back on the moment. He was almost too young for it.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of hit him too much as a young person. But yeah, what about that? That was an incredible.
So you never drunk out of it that night?
Not that night.
Because how old were you?
I was old enough to have a drink, but I didn't drink out of it that night. Well, I wasn't actually working for Bart at the time.
Okay, so you weren't part of the crew.
No, I wasn't. I didn't think it'd be the right thing to do to crash.
Yeah,
so
Bart would have looked down. He would have frowned at you too.
I came back 12 months later. I was Bart's foreman, settling up for him in Sydney, and Bart wasn't one for junkets, you know, coming to Melbourne, coming to Brisbane. Like, you had to have a reason to be there if you were going to be there. And I said to Bart, as we'd had Roman Emperor getting ready for the Caulfield Cup and Feud getting ready for the Caulfield Cup, I said, I'd love to come down for the Caulfield Cup, Bart. I think we've got a good chance of winning. And he said, who's going to be there on Sunday morning to open the stables? You know? I said, I know a bloke who can open the stables, Bart. We can get that sorted. Don't worry. Sunday morning, a few horses cantering around, and he said, someone's got to be there. And so he didn't want to be there for the races. Well, as soon as that horse crossed the line, I was on the next plane down to Melbourne. Yeah. When Viewed beat Roman Emperor, never went round a horse Viewed to win the Caulfield Cup after winning the Melbourne Cup 12 months earlier. And I was on the first plane down there, and I was celebrating with them that night. Yeah, Silks.
How good, yes.
Singing
he loved these Silks.
With Chin Nam.
Yep.
Pretty cool.
Every celebration was basically at Silks. And he had that little,
he'd have that
same table.
Yeah,
the same room there. Yeah.
And then when the bill came out, he'd say he was getting tired.
Go to the bathroom. He was good at that.
Oh, brilliant.
You
rode a lot for Bart, didn't you?
Oh, off and on. When I first come to Sydney as a young man, I rode for Bart, and got to ride some pretty good horses for him over the years. But I used to, like, you would understand, and you mightn't, Adam, but I used to love sitting back and just watch him do his thing, because he had this incredible ability to. The horse would be an overnight sensation, but he would have worked on that horse for 18 months. But he kind of knew when to turn the screws. He just knew, he'd just get that individual to a point when he knew that he could go like that, and it would come on board. He'd wait for the horse to tell him. And then the horse would just go, where'd that horse come from? You know, the outsider would say, Jesus, look at this horse. Bart's been working on this for 12 months. Just, you know, meticulously planning and doing that. He was a great planner, wasn't he?
He was. There was a trainer at Flemington who wondered out loud, well, what's View doing in the Cup that year?
Yeah.
40-1. His form had been a bit indifferent coming into it, although he was so badly held up in the Caulfield Cup, but unless you were really watching it, you wouldn't really be able to sense. Yep. You might have just thought he was back there, and that can happen at Caulfield.
Correct.
And the horse had missed a run in the lead up, so there was lots to like about.
And he was a big unit too, wasn't he?
Lots to like about the way the horse had built up, had endured the missed run. It was like a virus that came. anyway, he got over that, and then he gave him the final hit out in the McKinnon on the weekend, and he ran beautifully, but he was 40 to 1 in the Melbourne Cup, like 40, 50 to 1. And a trainer wondered out loud, well, you know, what's that horse doing there?
Oh dear.
And
Yeah, don't
he needed to remember, well, if Bart thought the horse should be there, then it's
Yeah.
a pretty good.
That's right.
It's a pretty good indication that the horse is worthy of his spot. And people have got short memories because you've only got to go back to June and watch a Brisbane Cup and he smashed them.
Yeah, absolutely.
He didn't just win stylishly, like he tore a hole through the field. And Ollie got off and said, Bart, this horse went 2. You've got to take the blinkers off him.
Yeah, that's right.
And Bart said, oh, don't worry about that, son.
Yeah. Correct.
So, well, no doubt have some more Bart stories and Anthony stories through this. But, mate, to you, so you're head of a huge operation. So you've got to be across so much. And we talk of planning. I dare say that's a big part of your existence. So you've got stables in Melbourne. You've got a couple of properties where you've got horses here in Sydney. There's probably other places around where they're all spelling. How on earth do you stay across it all? And for instance, right as we sit here right now, how many horses have you got that have got the ability to race, either now or when they come back from a spell?
We've got 231 horses that are named of racing age at the moment, between their 2-year-olds and older, and we'll drive that number down as we sell a few more horses and a few more trade. You know, a few more get retired out of the racing division, but. The first answer to your question really is to have a really good team, and it takes years, and it takes a lot of effort to build up a team that you're confident in, people that you know that are on board with how we're approaching the stable, how we approach the training, and then there are those times if I can't be there and you can't be everywhere at once. As these stables have gotten big, you need to have people that know how you would approach something if you were there yourself. And like I give a lot of autonomy to my assistants, but everyone's got to be training the horse in the same flow and the same rhythm. And we keep things pretty simple, but you've got to have that overarching philosophy for it to work. And you know when you're having a good season, like winners can hide a lot of sins, but you know when you're having a good season that flow's being achieved it's working and everyone's in sync. And that's a good feeling, but it takes a long time to put that together. And every trainer you get in here will tell you the same thing. It's got to be about a really good core team, and we have a lot of staff that might turn over through a stable because it's a transient thing. You know, like the staff that come here, they'll be leading good horses from one season to the next or riding good horses, but you've got to have those core people that know how to convey the principles that are important, and everybody can follow that from the moment they walk through the gate.
What about working with Darren? He must be a thrill.
Darren Beadman.
Mate, he, one of the greatest, or if not one of the greatest, we've ever produced in our country. If anyone asked me who was the best jockey you ever rode against, Darren's basically on the top of the list. So it must be a joy for you to be working beside him.
It is.
After he's
Darren and I talk all the time. We're always communicating. We talk about barrier trials, we talk about races, we talk about rides, we talk about staff, who's gelling, who isn't, where horses are happy on course. Darren's got a real knack of having it down pat. He's got the system down pat. He knows how I want it. He knows how to be aware of different trainers. Like he worked for John very well.
Yes.
And he rode a lot for John.
Yep.
But he's ridden a lot for my family as well. And so he really gets it. And we talk about the horses, but we talk about everything to do with what goes into making the operation click. And he's got a really amazing innate sense of it. Yeah. And it works. It works if you're at the Randwick Barrier Trials on a Monday morning. It works if you're at Warwick Farm for jump outs. It works if you're even talking about a ride at Moonee Valley or a ride at Flemington.
Yeah.
You know, he's the kind of person you can bounce things off.
He's good to have around, isn't he?
And it's not, one thing I do notice, I notice a good riders, they're not frightened to ask Darren what he thought of a ride if they're at the races with him. They don't all do it, but you can see a few of them are interested in what he
have
thought.
a fair idea, wouldn't he?
And Darren's not the type of person that will impose himself on them. He's very polite. He's very polite unless you have a go at him, and then he'll stand up for himself.
Yeah,
but
he's got a good sense of humour, the kid. I'll tell you, he's funny.
He'll help, and he'll be happy to answer. And in racing, I think it's a really great thing that racing people, trainers, jockeys, owners, breeders, that if you're prepared to ask the question, it's amazing how generous people in racing are prepared to be with you.
They're not protective of their own
I don't.
info.
I've never found it. Never ever have I found people that people who are offended by being asked. And the worst you can be told is no anyway. But it's amazing how few people are prepared to pick up the phone or wander up to someone and ask them what they thought about something or how they might go about this or what they knew about a horse they might have had in the past. It's so valuable to do. So Darren's he's so generous with his time, and people that might not even be on the team that day, they might ask him, and he's capable of showing them things and recalling things from his time, and that's something that's I'd say a really, really valuable. It's a really valuable angle for someone at the races, a young jockey, especially to take. Look what look at the impact that he's had for Zach Lloyd, who's recorded an amazing few seasons as our apprentice. I mean, that doesn't happen by fluke. Yeah,
exactly. Just back to your 231 kids that you're trying to teach to run fast. I'm just trying to get my head around this. And Bossy, you can talk to it from a jockey's point of view about when you rock up to track work and you go, this I'm hopping on this one, I'm hopping on this one. But firstly, like, how do you like put the systems in place, I'm guessing, and like know what, because they're all different athletes, knowing the idiosyncrasies from when they first come into the stable as a 2-year-old, I'm guessing, to work them out to get the best out of them, because they're all different, and yet you're trying to push them in the one direction.
Yeah, they come in earlier. They come in younger than 2-year-olds. They come in as yearlings, and that therefore there's a lot of time that we get to spend with them before we're actually starting to apply the pressure that's required to get them to a race. And in the first instance, we do keep it quite simple. We keep it, quite clinical. Everything's about education. It's about familiarisation, and we grow to know which of these horses are precocious, which of the horses are beginning to show more talent than others, which horses need a little extra time, and that's really labour intensive. There's like a lot of hands on those horses, and usually a horse will have 2 to 3 riders only, and there's a bit of a turnover, and they might switch between stables, and that's good because there's information that gets shared, and horses can change from stable to stable. But because there's 2 to 3 people with one of those horses all the way through, you're getting feedback from people every day, that horse every day, and we're getting feedback from feed sheets. We're getting feedback and keeping records of joints that might flare up or skin irritations that might be a consequence of how the horses are stabled. So we're thinking about everything. We're thinking about what we're feeding them, how they're bedded down, who's riding them, whether we change opinions or change of hands, change of an opinion, and they go through their necessary procedures, certain number of jump outs, certain number of gallops, and then we get them to barrier trials. And the Sydney and Melbourne jump out and barrier trial system's very good, because you can actually put a little bit more pressure on those young horses, and you gather from that which horses are able to go on with it further, and which horses are just not ready, and they come away from that from our system extremely well educated and very tolerant for what they're about to go through, if they're the types of horses that are going to be with us for another 3, 4, 5 seasons.
Yeah. What do you think your greatest asset is as a trainer?
I'd say that my greatest asset is to ask the questions and to listen to
the horses, listening to them, or your people.
Well, I think listening to my team.
Yep.
Really.
Yep.
I think that's such a valuable. Well, I think it is. Well, I think it is the most important element that a trainer can deploy to get a team ready. But it's easy to overlook. It's easy to. I said earlier that winners can hide a lot of sins, and you can think that just because you've had a good season, you can count on it happening all the time.
Well, it makes sense. If you're, I speak to a lot of like business people, like CEOs, and the best CEOs say, surround yourself with people who you think are smarter than you. Basically, you know what I mean. If I'm building a team, I'm the CEO, but I want people around me who I respect, who I think are smarter than me. Yeah. That makes my company good. You know what I mean? I'm not the boss telling them what to do. Yeah. I want to listen to them. You know what I mean? That's how companies thrive. Yeah, that's a very common conversation I've had with these sort of guys, the successful ones. So it's like you're running a big business.
And you're exactly right, and you put it perfectly. those good trainers that I see all over the world, they could run a business anywhere.
Yeah, there's no doubt.
Wouldn't shock me if Chris Waller could run.
Oh yeah,
He could run the tab if he wanted to.
yeah.
Because he's very clinical. He's very clinical like that. And
You could run Ladbrokes as well
Aiden-
if you want to give the
anything.
Spono
Aidan O'Brien.
mention.
I mean, Aidan
Yeah.
O'Brien. There's a guy with some attention to he's a details man.
Yep.
And he's
They're
just
born
so
a genius,
dedicated.
don't they? Some of
He's so
them.
dedicated to his stable, and I'd say I'd say that just being able to listen to your team is so important, and as long as you've got confidence in your team, and that's something that takes a long time to build up. By the time you've got them there, it almost looks like it's too easy in a way for the trainers. You might look at a trainer, you might go, what's he even doing?
Yeah.
But it's like there's dozens of really critical decisions throughout the year.
Correct.
But it's primarily the long, slow build up of a really good core team who are allowing that flow up and down the line,
Yeah.
up and down the line of information passed up and back about judgment calls each and every week,
Yep.
and relying on which piece of advice and which piece of information is more important than others based on your experience of your team members. And I would say that it's such a critical element in running a really good stable. And you see when stables are firing, they've got that.
Yes.
And
that
and
flow.
when the same trainer and the same stable, like when they're not quite, when you wonder, well, what's happened there, Often it can be a case of them rebuilding key personnel, rebuilding, the same sort, like getting similar sort of owners that might have come or gone. And
Yes.
and that just takes time to come back, and that's why the good stables, they're regularly the same names that are involved in
Correct.
a Guineas or a Slipper or a Cox Plate,
Yeah.
but it ebbs and flows.
Yeah.
Well, you're obviously across it all. You're not too stressed about it because despite the fact of having 231 horses, all that staff, all those people you trust, 4 children as well, and happily married, you don't have a grey hair in your head yet, which is remarkable after 10 years of training horses.
Well, he plays golf. He gets a little bit of time
Yeah.
to relax. And
We'll get into that in a sec. But just quickly, Bossy, your dealings with James as a trainer and I remember Bivouac in a
towards
Newmarket,
the end,
maybe a couple of others that I've skipped over there.
Colette
But
and the Oaks, yep.
Yeah, I was given the opportunity to ride when I come back to Sydney to ride some really good ones. Bivouac was a real beauty. Wow, the way he won the Newmarket and the what was the other sprint race he won down?
Won the VRC Sprint, beat Nature Strip.
Oh my God, there was no horse on the planet that could have beat him that day.
Really?
Oh no way. And he was one of them colts. When you got on him, he walked like a panther. Like he just when you got on him, you just loved being on his back because he was just a big, soft, beautiful. I can only relate him to walking like a panther. He used to just go like that, and that's how he galloped. And when he let go in that VRC sprint, like honestly, when you sometimes to break 10 for a furlong is reserved for very, very few athletes in this game under race conditions. They can do it track work sometimes, but a colt or any horse under race conditions to break 10. It's reserved for, mate, I'm talking 0.5 of the population, and he could do that. He did that in the VRC sprint that day. So, God, he was a good colt. He ran second in an Everest behind, and no one would have beat
Classic Legend
that day. But that was one of his biggest runs.
Yeah, I know. I was on him.
Yeah. I straightened up, and he let go of my sprint. Yeah. But Classic put three lengths of me, and I was shocked because I knew how quick I come, and I was actually a bit shocked. I went, fuck. Because I thought I'm going to beat him, because I tracked him the whole way, and I knew how quick my horse could go. And I went, oh, I'm going to go. And next thing, I had 3 lengths deficit to make up, and I was actually, it sucked the wind out of my sails. But he rallied and ran a good second, but he was a very good colt.
Trying to get a good horse to peak on a big day, is it easier to try and than try and get a horse to peak for its maiden and win a maiden, if you know what I mean? Because the good horses have got that much ability.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'd say over the years, as our focus has become more on those carnivals and it's become more on the top end and the elite horses that really would move the needle, as I've been taught at Godolphin. We've really focused on peaking horses in the right day. We've really focused on how we race our horses to shape our breed.
Yeah.
So
Anamoe was a very good example of that. There was times where everyone said,
True.
you raced him on as a 5-year-old,
Yeah.
a colt, valuable. So that just sends a message to everyone. He's got long. He should have won a slipper as a 2-year-old. He went on to race as a 5-year-old. So there's that longevity as a colt. You want that, right?
Yeah, and now we've got a great system, and we can educate our horses beautifully, and they get like the best of the best on the way through. Like they still do it tough from time to time. Where they're not mollycoddled, and I think that's a good thing. We don't have all the bells and whistles that people might sometimes expect. Like we don't even have a swimming pool in some of our stables, but the horses get well educated, and then there are wins left in them for horses that aren't going to make the grade. So I said earlier that we'll sell a few horses, and our horses, our tried horses, are really popular at the sales. Yeah, because the people know what they're going to get. They get to see all of their vet history. If there's ever a niggle, like if there's anything totally serious, we don't really sell that. We don't sell those horses. But all the little niggles, the way we looked after them, how we manage them, they get to see, and prospective buyers then come along, and there's the maiden wins in those horses and the class 1s, and those horses can race at Toowoomba, and they can race at Wagga, and
it's like an academy with footballers.
They can
essentially.
they can turn up on like provincial championships or country championships, and they can go through get into the right hands, and someone will win 3 in a row with horses like that. But yeah, our focus is like so primarily now onto like the.
When you talk about you haven't got all the bells and whistles, like with racing, it's like all sports, and doesn't matter what there's an evolution of and technology and science really has crept into our industry in a big way in the last 5 years. Have you gone that way, or is it you still like the old school? I mean, it's a bit of both. It's a bit of yin and yang. But have you gone into that science side of it?
Yes and no. And it's an interesting thing. I wonder for how much longer people are going to describe themselves as old school. But I know exactly what you mean, and we would tend to lean more on that side. Our horses are ridden; they're all ridden. We don't use a treadmill. Yep. I haven't got a treadmill in the stable, and I've noticed in the last 20 years treadmills have become incredibly popular. Like even at some stud farms, treadmills are used with stallions to strengthen them up, and occasionally I've seen treadmills used and might have used them in a former life. Like Bart had a couple of old treadmills you'd have to blow the cobwebs off. Yeah. You didn't use them all the time, but occasionally we might use treadmills for horses incline, only walking. But horses are at full gallop now with some treadmills with all the monitors the data that comes.
Have you seen them on a treadmill full gallop?
Yeah.
It's a scary looking thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah.
And noisy.
It's noisy, but it's it's scary. For me to sit there and watch them gallop full, like it only doesn't take a tiny thing to go wrong, and it just goes catastrophically wrong.
So our horses are ridden. Yep. We don't have the concussion plates. We don't have all the. We don't have like a pool at Osborne Park. We don't have a swimming pool, and I think that like as much as it'd be nice to have ice baths in all the stables and have the chamber. What was the latest one?
The hyperbaric.
The hyperbaric chambers. Like
I don't know.
How many horse trainers could even come in here and explain how that works?
Well, that's right. I mean,
how do you put a horse in a hyperbaric chamber?
Well, you've got to be careful.
On a treadmill.
You've got to be really careful. You've got to take their plates off because, there have been horrible examples internationally where horses have been in a chamber and incorrectly used and a spark's flown up from a race plate and the whole thing, the whole thing's gone up.
Unbelievable.
So anyway, that's a bit off. But to get to the point, like we're
keep it simple. Keep it basic.
We're pretty simple, a bucket of water, a few dippers of oats.
Yep.
And a track work rider.
Yeah, well, Gay was the same,
And a stopwatch.
I asked her about that, and she still feeds the same as what TJ back in the days, because she said with the new feeds that have come on board, like that's what's causing a lot of ulcers in horses, because the high protein, their gut is not really designed for it. So she still feeds old school, and that's what worked for Dad. That's what's worked for me. You know what I mean? So
a bit over 20 years ago, one of the things that Bart really enjoyed exploring with Percy Sykes.
Yep.
Great old vet, who was really a vet to the stars and the Eastern Seaboard
well before his
trainers in Australia, and he they together developed some ulcer treatments, and they were using it on horses like Rogue and Josh came over, and Bart swore that the ulcer guard changed Rogue and Josh, got him eating better, got him looking better, and settled down the ulcers, the ulceration that was in. Like a lot of horses that are in stables would suffer from ulceration of the stomach because they're not always eating roughage with their head down throughout the day. They're eating like high protein feeds, and he was convinced that changed that horse. But now everybody's enjoying the benefits of having been taught well about nutrition. Everyone's enjoying. Nutrition companies like Ranvet are educating a whole generation of racehorse trainers, and that's thanks to people like Percy Sykes, my grandfather, who were so big on nutrition, so big on the taking of bloods, examining pathologies, and actually looking at horses more closely than over the box door. Bringing horses out and actually looking at the horse first, deciding with their eyes whether a horse was well or whether a horse was poor, and examining the gaits of horses after gallops, and backing off on horses. It was not so long ago that horses were raced twice in one day, or regularly backed up from one day to the next, or galloped every day of the week. In Australia, that wasn't that long ago, and a generation of trainers have been educated to move away from that, and to do things a little bit with a little bit more care. Well, a little bit more care is probably not the right word.
Well, I think they look at them as like they're like a human athlete. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like a human athlete. If your gut is not right, you're not right, and it comes out in your skin or your performance. Horses are no different. They're just big athletes.
Yeah. So trainers use a lot more caution. Yes. They're very cautious now, and the top stables are even more so. But I think it is really interesting how technology has come in, and the use of GPS monitors, heart rate monitors. They also monitor stride length and top speeds. That are fascinating. Yeah. It's great to watch that evolve, and some stables take more note of that than others, and we're conscious that the information that goes in is as important as the information that you get out, because it's got to go in all the time and it's got to be consistent. Yeah. So we have GPS monitors on our horses, and we hand time them concurrently as the GPS is going through. We get a report that comes back in. We like to do a report, all the horses at one moment in the day. So at about 11 o'clock, I'll get a report in from all the gallops. But we'll be clocking them, and my riders will come back in, and we've got the riders really well trained. Like the riders are really impressive. You should come out and see it, because they can get horses. Like Bossy's like one of the riders that would be able to do this, but they could get horses to go 15 to the furlong every furlong. And if you ask them to quicken up 2 and 26 seconds the last 400, they can get it bang on 26 seconds. And if it's not 26, it'll be 25.9 or it'll be 26.1.
But you've got to get that
you're
right.
counting in your head?
Oh, yeah, you're counting all the time.
It's incredible.
You never stop.
It's incredible the precision that you can train someone to ride a half-ton racehorse to actually get bang on a circuit track, because they've just done it day in, day out. And some riders who are still learning, but Australians, especially Australian employees, like to argue with their bosses, and so they might say, hang on, I said that's a speeding fine for you, too quick, and they'll say, I wasn't too quick, and I'll say, hey, the watch doesn't lie. Yeah, those posts haven't moved, and I say, I'll tell you what, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll check the bunker. And so it's like the NRL bunker. The bunker comes in at 11 o'clock.
The GPS.
And I get the report in. The first thing when they come in on their first horse at 5:30 the next morning, they might say, how'd that bunker look?
How was I? No, you were too quick.
Yeah.
100%.
Was there many arguments with this fella? Or was
not
he
many.
right?
No, not many.
No.
Bossy,
never got it wrong, the county.
No, Bossy was very good. But Bossy rode for Bossy would have to have the. It's a bit like I was talking about with Darren. Like when you've got the knack, you're riding work for Lee Friedman one morning, and you're riding work for Bart another morning. You're doing a jump out on a horse, so you think you've got to work with your trainer, because one trainer can train two horses, but two trainers can't train one. Yep. You've got to have everyone working in the same direction.
Yeah, that's
correct.
correct.
And so if you're riding a jump out for Bart one morning, but then you're doing a gallop for Lee
Yep.
Friedman down
That's
the
right.
Mornington Peninsula. You just got to work with your trainer.
Yeah.
When you like working towards the future, where do you see yourself? Like obviously with Darley now, the operation. And what is your future? Is it with Darley at primary right now, or have you thought about life after Darley, or what you might do?
I have, and I've normally got to be a bit careful talking about it too much because you sort of, it's hard to always remove yourself as a trainer, and then as the head of a team.
Yes.
Because I'm really not just James Cummings when I speak now.
No,
I'm
you're
representing Godolphin,
correct.
and I'm representing everyone that works at Godolphin. It's a whole team, so you've got to be a bit careful not to always just ponder on your future because it's going to affect other people.
Yeah, correct.
But what I would say is it's like quite incredible to enjoy watching pedigrees of horses from one generation to come through one generation to the next.
Yeah, yeah.
And there are good horses that are racing now that might be out of mares I used to train. There are 2-year-olds by Bivouac that are barrier trialling now.
Yeah,
It's pretty exciting to see a whole generation of horses come through. And the day you won the Oaks for me on Colette was a classic example. Colette was by Hello Crown. Hello Crown was the first of my Group 1 winners. And you won a Golden Rose, Hugh Bowman, wide gate, just nailed them on the line. And it was the most exhilarating professional feeling I can remember. And yet, fast forward to a period of time where there's no one at the races, where during the pandemic, we're wondering 1 week to the next, are we still in the game here, or are we shutting down? Bossy rides Colette on the back up. She'd won the Adrian Knox the week before, and Bossy just rode her perfectly. She won in a facile fashion, right? And Vin Cox rang me and he said he couldn't even be at the track because there's restrictions.
That's right.
He rang me and he said that is an amazing achievement, like to have trained.
Yep.
To have trained the sire and now to have trained an Oaks winner.
Pretty cool.
A daughter of that horse is amazing.
That's a cool thing to do, isn't it?
And so you asked me where that's what I'm really looking forward to, seeing a generation of horses through.
The Anamoes.
Looking forward to the Bivouacs hitting the track, Anamoes hitting the track, the foals that are on the ground in the Hunter Valley. That my guys are pretty conservative. They don't get carried away too much. They don't really need to because they're not hard sellers. No, the guys from Darley, and yet that they are convinced that these are the best foals they have ever seen from a freshman sire.
The Anamoes.
The Anamoes are unbelievable.
Is that why you're wearing his jacket today?
So
on the back of that says Anamoe. So
it's a pretty proud name to have on the back of a jacket.
I'll be walking around in it as well.
You talk about colts that oozed like charisma and style.
Yeah.
Like I'm talking about the So You Thinks. Anamoe was that colt, wasn't he? When he walked into a ring, he commanded presence. You couldn't take your eyes off this colt. You know what I mean? Cox Plate Day, you were just like fixed on this colt. Yeah. The way he used to, like, as soon as James would get on him, he actually just come up like that. Yeah. Like he'd walk around the enclosure, like doing his job. But as soon as James got on, he definitely he come up half a hand.
Yeah, he was an alpha male, wasn't he? Yeah,
he just went like that, and his whole demeanour changed. Yeah, I get goosebumps talking about it because you'd watch him, and then he'd come. And then he'd do this. He just knew his job so well. Rarely you get colts that, like, very proud. That's the word I'm looking for. Very proud of himself, you know.
And quick.
Quick.
Well, you just got to look at horses like Mr. Brightside, who's still winning Group 1, notched up his 8th Group 1.
Yeah.
Anamoe was beating that horse. He was beating him for fun. He just.
Was it 9 Group 1s he ended up winning?
Yeah, nine Group 1s. Yeah. Not many you don't see that with colts.
And these days, he brought you to tears one day, didn't he? Or a couple of times.
Yeah, he was so important for us. He was our number one most important horse in training, and we took a big leap of faith in that horse to keep him in training after his 3-year-old year. And there's two races in Australia that are the best. They're the best indicators for races for a horse's future potential at start. There's 2 races that by far and away, head and shoulders above all the other races, that will give you an indication that you've got a better than average chance of having a successful sire. The first one's a slipper, and Anamoe was there in the golden slipper. It's not his fault he drew the outside, but he thundered home and ran second. Stay inside would have been pretty hard to beat that day because he was just Glenn Schofield was talking to me about Stay Inside. Tommy Berry rode the horse, but he said that the way that horse just accelerated, you wouldn't see too many 2-year-olds get beaten or race like that. But Anamoe was peeling ground off him fast as a finisher.
One had a perfect run and one had a not imperfect run.
And
barrier draws dictated that.
And the second race is the Cox Plate.
Yep.
So his next chance to be the type of horse that was at stud that could be could be one of those horses that just by winning those races, the odds are all stacked in his favour to be a great stallion. He got 2 cracks at it. He ran it as a 3-year-old, which is a great test for a horse.
Oh my God!
That far?
Got beat so narrowly.
That far?
Got beat so narrowly, and he was able to come back. We had, it was a great risk, and it was a great leap of faith in the horse to keep him going.
Yeah.
And when you keep them going now, the way it's all set up, like you've a horse that's going on a Cox Plate path, he's first up in a Group 1 in the wings, and it was incredible the amount of pressure that we were under for
but you got to
the
pick
faith
your
that we
mark
put
too,
him
haven't
in.
you?
Yeah,
You got to pick your mark. Like
exactly
he was obviously,
right.
I reckon he probably never had an unsound day in his
Yeah,
life. He looked like that type of colt.
He was a
He was,
beautiful mover.
Yeah, he just did everything right, didn't he?
And that's probably a great reason why he's been able to go from a pre-Christmas 1,000-metre stakes winner of a Merson Cooper.
Yep.
All the way through to winning a George Ryder in the autumn of his 4-year-old career. Where you just don't see horses doing that very much anymore.
No,
at
the
all.
good colts
He's a
you don't
freak.
see.
And now now he's got the chance to
Stamp 'em.
to throw those horses,
Yeah.
and that's a whole generational thing that that the organisation knows is incredibly important to what we're doing.
Hey, just one general one about Bart and how he had this wonderful wit and like deliver, I'm guessing, advice as well in the same manner. Like he didn't use a whole encyclopedia of words. He just got to the point. There was this famous story, and I don't know how much of it's an urban myth, that when a health inspector or something rocked up at one of his stables, I think it was Flemington, it was a really hot day.
Yeah,
there was lots of flies, and the health inspector goes, "You've got too many flies here," and Bart says, "How many am I allowed to have?"
Yeah, that's right.
One of the greatest lines, and I hope it's true. It sounds true. But was he able to ever impart knowledge to you quickly and succinctly that you still kind of remember the quote in your head?
Yeah, he did. I guess you're asking, can I sometimes hear his voice when I'm faced with certain,
or something that you rely on in a general
certain
sense.
Challenges, and it does, yeah, it definitely does. He was a larger than life sort of a figure, and as a boss, like I used to, on a good day, I'd look at him like he was my grandfather when I was working for him, and if he was being really kind and he was being like, he was in a good mood and he was laughing about things, we'd affectionately grow up calling him Papa, that's what all his grandkids would call him Papa when we were growing up. But more regularly, he was all business.
Yeah.
He wouldn't let sentiment get in the way of business, and he was on me like a rash, Every temperature in the stable was my fault. Every sesamoid that got a bit big was my fault. Yeah. Every horse that loomed up and gave out in condition late at Canterbury on a Wednesday meeting was my fault. And that's tough, when you're young and you're working for someone like Bart, who's a statue. Like you
can't don't want to let him down either.
You can't criticise a statue to anyone. You just get everything he says is gospel. And as a young guy in racing, you're just learning all the time. But you get a bit of an idea, and you get an opinion. And he's taught me to ask everyone, and I might ask 9 people. And they've told me one thing, but if he's the 10th person that says, no, you weren't swimming him enough, that's why he knocked up. You weren't swimming him. You've just got to take that, and that's the sort of character shaping criticism that you'd get as a young person learning on the way through. Yeah. So I can hear his voice all the time when I'm thinking about certain problems, or if I get given a certain excuse from someone about what might have gone wrong, and I sort of smile about it, because I think, half of these people wouldn't cop the criticism Bart used to give. They wouldn't wear it these days. Like, it's just it is a bit of a different world, isn't it? But
bit of tough love, doesn't it?
But there's different ways of leading, aren't there? Like, there's also a lot of give and take, and there's a lot you can gain out of treading a little bit more softly, and that's probably a bit more my style as a manager or as a leader, and yet, none of us are impervious to criticism anymore. Anyway, like, I might give an interview and I might get told by some of the guys at Godolphin, just don't talk about yourself quite so much, include, don't forget, you got to talk about the team. And I'd say, got to talk about the team. God, I reckon I overuse the word.
It's always the team.
I sworn I overuse it,
Yeah.
And he said, no, I don't think you do. I said, what? Are you suggesting I use too many pronouns? And he said, yeah, I think you do. I said, how many pronouns am I allowed to use? That's what I asked.
Oh, you did it.
There you go.
I thought that was pretty
Touche.
funny. Yeah.
Did you talk about Bart? Yeah.
When you wrote a good one for him, would he give a compliment easily?
No, I didn't really, not really. But when you talk about having him, like having the voice in your head, the day that I'll never forget is when he rang me after, say, you think got beaten in the Caulfield Guineas. He said to me, "Bossy, I want you to ride this horse on the Cox Plate." He wasn't. He still was a maidener. Oh yeah, no, he won one race. One race. You know,
Got beaten.
Won a
in the
couple,
Caulfield
yeah,
Guineas.
and he got beaten in the Caulfield Guineas. And he
Got
said,
beaten in the Ming Dynasty and he got beaten in the
"Yep."
Caulfield Guineas.
And he said, "This."
But he won the
is-
gloaming in between.
That's right.
Yep.
Huey Bowman won the gloaming on him. And but Bart said, "I think this horse will win the Cox Plate. I think this horse might be the best horse I've ever trained." And I went, "Fuck, you had me at hello." Like, no, and he said, "I need you to be at Flemington on the Tuesday before the Cox Plate because we're going to put blinkers on him and we're going to jump him out, you know." And but for Bart to say that, I was like, "Are you serious? This could for him to say like the horse flesh that went through his hands."
You don't second guess him.
And but it was true to his word. That probably was one of the best horses he ever trained. Like he went on to win globally 10 Group 1s around the world. Was the world's best horse. He ran. He got no idea the races he ran in that
Running
horse.
an Arc.
De Triomphe. He went in a
Dubai World Cup.
Breeders' Cup. Well, he went in every race. It's a wonder he didn't go to Birdsville. That horse. But
Could have gone to Roma with you a couple of weeks
when you talk about
ago.
those good colts, he just kept turning up that colt, didn't he?
Yeah.
What a superstar.
General one, before I got a couple of quickfire ones before we let you go, but a general one, like seriously, what's the downtime? Is there downtime for you? Have you got 3.5 minutes a day where you get to just go between going to kids things and looking after the kids and having a good relationship and being a good husband and all of that, and then training horses?
Well, look, the short answer is yes, and I think it's really important. Well, I'm convinced it's important because everyone I see that's doing well is able to manage their time well in circumstances like those you're describing. And occasionally, one of my insights is that occasionally I do the presentations of long service awards at the stable, and there might be work rider, it might be a foreman, it might be a groundskeeper at Osborne Park, but they often toss me the microphone and they say, "James, you're the man. You've got to present the long service award." And I love doing it. And one morning there, not so long ago, it's about 8 weeks ago, there was I counted up 75 years worth of service in the collection of people that I was doing long service awards for. 75 years that collection of people are devoted to a stable. And that's what it's all about. I mean, that's how you manage to get time to yourself. That's how everyone manages to get time away to travel and to explore different things in the world and see their family. Put bricks back in the wall. Because racing sucks a lot of your time, especially during the spring carnival.
Time and energy.
I think I overheard Chris Waller. He probably said it to me. He said it to someone near me. He said, "Look, it's hard for my kids at this time of year. They don't get to see much of me." And there are times of the year where you've just got to be all in and paying full attention and fully devoted. But because it's a team and because people can rely on each other, you get those times where someone can be at the stable to open up on a Sunday morning and you can be in a state, or you go to Brisbane or you go to Perth and you've got horses far different reaches of the country, and soon it might be horses travelling overseas, but you've got to have a really good team, and you've got to have those people around you that you can therefore rely on if you're going to have a game of golf once every now and then.
That's right.
You're going to have the chance to go and see your 9-year-old's music concert or something. And I think that all has the reverse effect. You might be away, but then you're encouraged to come back as well.
That's just what Chris.
You see things with fresh eyes.
Yeah, well, Chris, he hasn't had a holiday for many, many years. He went to the States. He had 2 weeks off, and he come back. He said, "Mate, I'm brand new." But it showed in the team. He had a season kicked off the spring like he'd never kicked off. But his energy levels were great because he just went away and he didn't look at his phone for a while, and he had that proper break. So you got to have that balance. You just have to have that balance.
Couple of quick fire questions then to tail things off. The one horse you always wish you trained?
So you think?
Yeah.
There you go. backed up by
Well, I only
Bossy's
rode.
words.
Well, I tell everyone under race conditions, I only ever rode 2 champions in my life because that's a word that can give very loose.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I there's a few tick boxes they've got to tick to become a champion, in my opinion. I rode 2 of them in my life. So You Think was one, and Makybe Diva.
Yeah.
The only 2 champions I actually rode under race conditions. I rode Black Caviar in a gallop once. That was the other champions. But that's how he's equal to Makybe Diva as horses I've ever ridden.
Wow. Training a 2-year-old horse or parenting a 2-year-old child? What's more difficult? Because I've done one and it ain't much fun sometimes. And I don't know about horses, but trying to guide a little 2-year-old sometimes, especially down the shops, is
Especially one with heap ability when they don't want to work with you.
Yeah.
That's they're
the
the ones
with ability.
Yeah.
Look, for the range of emotions you go through, they are in lock and step. You know? It's amazing how frustrating both could be.
Yeah.
Fair enough. And also, how hard do you have to work to get an upgrade on Emirates, personally?
I haven't flown Emirates for a while, but I'd say we get pretty well looked after.
You've got an inside run there, fair enough.
Yeah.
You deserve it as well. You deserve it, mate.
Yeah. Upgraded flights has been in the news lately. So
Yeah, that's it.
gotta be a bit
Well, you're not a politician. You can say what you want.
Yeah.
100%.
You know, Aussies, it's funny because normally Aussies brag about when they got the upgrade.
Oh, well, yeah.
You get
Yeah.
to somewhere you're going, you're like, you wouldn't
No.
believe it. I got there, I dressed really well, and I put the word on them, and they gave me the upgrade. You know?
Now
Now you're a leper if you got an upgrade.
Ever get an upgrade off an owner and say, "Oh, well done, mate, on that
Oh,
horse"?
yeah,
there you go.
plenty of times you've
Yeah?
got things like that. Yeah, you know.
Happy days.
But you take it, as mate, you work your ass off. I deserve this.
Yeah,
You know?
it's fair.
Yeah.
It's fair.
Mate, normally when I get on the plane, I just go right anyway. Hardly ever go left.
Is there a left? Is there? I don't
Well,
know.
left's up the front, and
Yeah.
I'm down the back.
I'm with you.
with my people.
Yep. Licking kneecaps in
that's it, mate.
57E. Yeah. James, mate, love the chat.
Mate.
Again, I reckon we've just scratched the surface here, so we'll have to get
Yeah,
him back
basically,
again
yeah.
another
It feels like that.
If you can spare the hour, I'm not sure. But,
No, it's a pleasure. I love coming in.
mate, you got I don't know what summer entails for you. Is it looking ahead to autumn, or do you get a bit of downtime?
Yeah, I've got a bit of downtime. I mean, there's a few races coming up. The most important thing for the next period is the young horses.
Yeah.
The 2-year-olds, just getting it right with them, and they fall into their slot with the right day they've trialled, and
Yeah.
it's the right little gallop and getting them ready for a race, a little 1,000-metre race or 1,100-metre race.
Yeah.
And they're often the most exciting races on the weekend,
Correct.
late November, December, January. The
Going to the
2-year-old
studs,
race.
Going to the studs now, looking at
exactly.
weanlings.
Yep. Yeah,
You
looking
feel
at
like the process.
young stock coming through.
Yeah, looking at the
absolutely.
Well, mate, really enjoyed the chat. I learned a heap, and thanks for dropping by on Who's the Boss.
Pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you.
James. Good on you, brother.
Well, Bossy, you warned me. You said he's a very intelligent young man, and he absolutely is. I'm just amazed at these big trainers who can stay across all of these magnificent horse flesh and get them going in the right direction, which James most definitely has.
Well, you hear him mention a lot of time the team. You know, he's built up a very good team around him. Like, the whole thing is that to be across everything, you need a lot of good people around you. And he has been as intelligent as he is. I think the most intelligent thing he has done is surrounding himself by great people. Darren Beadman, who we can lean on. You know, so it's a massive operation with a lot of horses, and it astounds me how these top trainers are across it all. You could ask him about any horse in his stable and he'll be able to rattle it off straight away. But yeah, I just love sitting down and picking his brain a bit, just listening to himself, how he's got this, and seems to have a great work-life balance, which he's, very cleverly got across all of that. So what an intelligent bloke.
Yeah, I did notice actually, Bossy, when he got here, I went out to meet him out on the street, and he opened the back of his car to get another, put his Anamoe jacket on, actually. And there were golf clubs in the back of the car, which made me think, oh, good. At least you get away. At least you get some downtime. He's got his kids who, keep him busy, no doubt, and his lovely wife. But to have that ability to at least find a couple of hours in the day so you're just not immersed in everything and you're going to get worn out. Because you would have seen trainers just get completely burnt out over your time, surely.
No doubt, because it's a 24/7 job. The owners, he's probably got there's not a lot of big owners. He's got the one stable, right? The Boss, the Sheikh. So he's probably got that side of it where he doesn't have to answer to hundreds and hundreds of owners. But at the end of the day, it's still the same job. You're immersed in it. It consumes your whole life. You think about it 24/7. So you need a release. You need to have a balance to make it all work. And like he said, when he does have that release, it actually makes him a better trainer, makes him a better person. And I think a lot of people can take a lot of what James said and use it in their own lives.
Yeah, actually, just before we move on, a little anecdote about that. I remember back with Mackaybe's last Melbourne Cup, and I was working for Seven, and I came and interviewed you, and I went and interviewed Lee Friedman. Now, the difference between you two characters at that time, you knew how to kind of, zone in at the right time, but in between, not kind of just get overawed or whatever. Like the Monday before, you just sat down, you had the little form guide in front of you going, oh, yeah, this one might leave. So you mapped out the race, but you were, in a state of mind that wasn't heightened. Whereas at the same time, I went and visited Lee Friedman. He was like, his eyes were rolling around his head. He was like so stressed about not only Mackaybe, but the other runners he had. So it hits these guys and women between the eyes, doesn't it?
Oh, it certainly does. When they're living with the animal, they're waking up every morning making sure the first thing they go and check their temperature. You know what I mean? So it's, especially when you've got these horses at that high level, and to win these races, Adam, everything has to be perfect. You know what I mean? You can look back at a preparation of the horse and say, well, why I won? Because nothing went wrong. So you're up. You're thinking about, did they leave any feed? Is the temperature right? How am I going to work it today? Because they might have a plan of what they're going to do the next day, but then they look at the horse and go, actually, no, it looks pretty fit. I don't need to do any more with it. So it's an ongoing process. So they never stop thinking. As a jockey, we get to do our job and then go home and switch off and don't have to think about that animal until the next time I see it. So it's a different animal that they're dealing with all the time.
Good lifestyle choice you got there, Bossy. No training for you post jockey career, so absolutely not. Now, quick mention of our sponsors. You can see the hat on my knee right now. If you're listening, everyone on a podcast, I've got a hat on my knee, and it reads IPE, and it's our sponsors, our good friends at International Premier Events. If you love your racing, rugby, or state of origin, these guys are the best in the business when it comes to client entertainment, whether it's the British and Irish Lions coming here to Australia next year. Obviously, Timmy Horan, a recent guest, very excited about that. Got the Melbourne Cup, got Origin in the middle of next year as well. Look them up. Get involved. You can hang out with legends. Bossy gets involved with the guys at IPE, and it's good fun. You'll have a good time, correct, Bossy?
But yeah, and don't forget the F1 in March in Melbourne. They do a very big event there, and I've been to it. It's so good, and it's on one of the best parts of the racetrack. So if you haven't been to the F1 in Melbourne, get on to IPE, and they'll hook you up, and you'll have the best day of your life. So
to do so, go to ipevents.com.au, buy your corporate tickets with IPE, and we'll hopefully see you at some stage in 2025 at a massive sporting event. Let's now have a look at Bossy's best for this weekend. Here we go, pressure on, even though he's on a little break with his mates. He's been paying attention here, Glenn Boss, and he's going to have a look at some of the big racing this weekend. Some Group 1 racing in Perth continues. Bossy, the Winterbottom Stakes, what do you make of this one?
Yeah, well, the Ladbrokes Summer Carnival over in Perth is, like you say, in full swing. And this is a really good race, the Winterbottom. And Overpass, he's going for his repeat victory. He won it last year. Geez, he's a good horse, this bugger. He's kind of one of those horses that's flown under the radar in the sprinters for, but now he's been recognised as one of the very, very good sprinters that we have. He's built up an amazing record, great prize money. He's one of the horses, he takes luck out of the equation. He goes forward, which is why he's got such an imposing record now. And he must like the water over there in Perth, because he's won 2 quackers and he's going for his second Winterbottom. That's a fair effort, right? So he's drawn awkwardly, but don't worry about that. He's got great gate speed. Josh Parr knows this horse so well. He'll overcome that wide barrier and he'll look a winner for most of this straight. I reckon he's good enough to win.
Fair enough. He is the favourite. You've got some, obviously, some very good Perth sprinters involved, the locals as well. But do you find that sometimes with a horse that they can travel and thrive in a unfamiliar surround, as opposed to just being back in their box and enjoying things at home?
Yeah, Adam, what it does is sometimes just stimulates them. They get to another environment, a new barn, it's all new, and they, like he's been there a few times, but it just gives them a bit of a stimulation and they're up and about. So it's like when you see horses change stables. They just sometimes get stimulated in a new environment, and it just sparks them up, and enough to pull something out of them which they hadn't been previously pulling out of themselves, So I think it really works for this bloke. He loves to travel. He's been to Queensland. He's been to Victoria. So he obviously doesn't care about where he is. But, you'd be a hard man to say he can't win there on the weekend. He's going to be very hard to beat.
He sounds like you, mate. Love travelling and get refreshed everywhere you go.
Yeah. Mate, why not? It's a big world. Get out there and get amongst it.
That's bloody good advice, Bossy. Bloody good advice. Now in Melbourne, you've got the big day that they used to run at Sandown, but they're running it at Caulfield. So you got group races all the way through. But the highlight is the Zipping Classic, named after the grand old Lloyd Williams horse that won about 14 of these races on this particular day in a row. And he got so good at it, they named the race after him, Bossy.
Yeah, what a great horse. I actually rode him in a Melbourne Cup, and I ran third or fourth on him. I think it was fourth. He straightened up, and I give him one of my best rides in a Melbourne Cup. He presented like the winner, and he ripped to the line, and then he got to about 200 metres out, and his run ended. He just didn't quite get 2 miles, but over a mile and a quarter, a mile and a half, he was very, very good. He won 4 of these races in 4 years in a row. Can you believe that? So hence the Zipping Classic, in honour of a great horse. And I think this year is going to it's a really good addition this year, actually. I like Berkeley Square. Very important rider engagement here. Rider change. Mickey D goes on. I love this rider. He's so good over a distance. So I think Berkeley Square is going to be very hard to beat this weekend.
Beauty, Bossy. We've got some good races in Sydney as well. We've got a $2 million colt running around in Sydney, first up, a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Do you know it when you sit on a really expensive one, like first up, just to make sure that you get things right for the owners who have shelled out big style?
The worst thing you could do is ask how much this colt was bought for. Because then what it does, it actually makes you have a perception of the colt. You think, oh, he's got to be good because they paid big money for it. I'd never ask. Half time I didn't want to know their breeding, because then you'd have a feeling about, oh, it should be this or it should be that. I'd rather get on the animal and then say, okay, we found one. And then they might say, oh, it's by shit Stallion or it's blah, blah, blah. And I say, well, I don't care. It doesn't know who it's by. It doesn't know how much it went through the ring for. That's all it knows is it can run fast.
Well, all the best to Kieran McAvoy this weekend, because he's on a 1.9 million one for Coolmore. So he knows how to handle things. He's been on very expensive horses before, hasn't he, Bossy?
100%, mate. Won't even bother him one bit.
No worries. So that's the racing this weekend. Good luck to Bossy's best. Look forward to seeing how it all pans out, mate. And you're back from your rest next week?
I'm back. I'm on a flight this afternoon back to Queensland. And yeah, I've had a wonderful week here, but it's been the holiday's over. Get back home and start getting back into work. What a bummer! If you can call what I do work.
This is not work. Talking about sport and talking to legends. So we've got some good guests lined up, haven't we, over the next couple of weeks? So who's the boss?
Mate, I can't wait to get amongst it. Series 2 is going to be a lot of fun. So hopefully people out there are enjoying it as much as we are. I'm enjoying it. Hopefully they get something out of it. That's all I really want. I just want to hopefully people get a bit entertained. That's all I want. We'll try, Bossy. Mate, thanks so much. Safe flight back. We'll catch you soon. Thank you. Look forward to seeing you next week. So that was another edition of Who's the Boss. Don't forget, you can catch us through socials on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, also on YouTube at Who's the Boss Pod, and listen everywhere where you get your good podcasts and the bad ones as well. This is not a bad one. We'll be back next week with another episode of Who's the Boss. Thanks for your company. Thanks everybody for watching Who's the Boss Pod. If you want to subscribe, click around here, and if you want to watch more content, it's over here. Click there.